to do with it, but even if it did, give San Antonio credit. They out-hustled the Warriors and outplayed them in the second half.
Welcome into Warriors Wrap-Up. Mark Randy with you here on 95.7 The Game. You heard there from Tim Roy, voice of the Warriors here on 95.7 The Game. A loss for the Warriors in San Antonio tonight. Final score, Spurs 104, Warriors 94. It was an interesting basketball game because it felt like a game the Warriors were going to win. They led essentially for the first 3+ quarters. The Spurs scored the first points of this basketball game, but the Warriors quickly took the lead after that. They led the rest of the first quarter. They led the entire second quarter. They led the entire third quarter. And they led for the majority of the fourth quarter until the Spurs, beginning a run late in the third quarter, eventually came all the way back, and then they run away with this thing. Final score, 104-94. Warriors fall to the Spurs. They will return home to take on the Nets from Brooklyn in the Bay Area coming up on Monday. We can talk a little bit more about that later on here on 95.7 The Game. But first of all, welcome in. A rough Warriors loss on this Saturday, but appreciate all you guys tuning in here on Warriors Wrap-Up. You can join the conversation by hitting me up on the Comcast Business text line or by calling and joining the show yourself. The number is the same for both, 888-957-9570. Again, that number, 888-957-9570. So Spurs 104, Warriors 94. We can kind of tell the story of this basketball game in the final 14 minutes of the game. And we'll talk about what happened in the first half. Really, it was just a great defensive performance for the Warriors. The Spurs only scored 38 points in the first half. It was a new best for the Warriors defensively in a half, the fewest points they've allowed in any half so far this season. But eventually, they built a 17-point lead with 1:55 to go in the third quarter. The Warriors led 81-64. Again, 81-64, 1:55 to go in the third quarter. And then the Spurs, they begin their comeback at that moment. They close the quarter on a 7-0 run to get back within 10 at the end of the third quarter. And there was a couple of moments, I think, where this game turned. And it was there towards the end of that third quarter. Warriors with the ball, leading by 15 points with about 35 or 40 seconds left in the quarter, and they have possession of the basketball. Kevon Looney moving screen. The Spurs turn that into a three-pointer. So instead of a 15-point lead and a chance to make it a 16, 17, 18-point lead, it's down to a 12-point lead. Then the Warriors, go the other way with the basketball again, trying to close the quarter with a bucket. And Buddy Hield turns the ball over, and it turns into a fast break bucket for the Spurs. So suddenly, it's a 10-point lead instead of, who knows, it could have been up to a 20-point game going into the third quarter, really, or going into the fourth. You were up 15, an opportunity with possession of the basketball to go 2 for 1. And if you execute the 2 for 1 perfectly, say you get a simple 2-point bucket, you're up by 17. You get a stop. You get the ball back. Maybe Steph hits a buzzer-beating 3 to close the third quarter. You go up by 20, and you probably win this basketball game. Instead, you turn the ball over twice, both times leading to points for the San Antonio Spurs. And instead of leading again by 15, 16, 17, anywhere up to like 20, you're going into the fourth quarter up by 10. Now, you lead by 10 in the fourth quarter. You still feel like you should win that basketball game, but that is where this game turned. Warriors committing a couple of turnovers at the tail end of that third quarter, and it directly leading to points for the San Antonio Spurs, and that run continued into the fourth quarter. The Warriors in this game were not bad in terms of taking care of the basketball. In fact, only 10 turnovers tonight. You will take that every single night, and if the Warriors only commit 10 turnovers a night for every game the rest of the season, they might win 60 games this year. Like, you commit 10 turnovers a game, you're going to win a lot of basketball games. But it was just when they happened that really hurt the Warriors. It was those two late in the third quarter, and then they had a couple of more in the fourth that just fed the San Antonio run that was happening that spanned the end of the third and really the entire fourth quarter. How about this? It was 81-64 Warriors, again, with 1:55 to go in the third quarter. The rest of the game, so essentially the final 14 minutes of this basketball game, 13 minutes and 55 seconds if we want to be precise. The San Antonio Spurs outscored the Golden State Warriors 40-13 over the final 13:55. We're talking about a little more than a quarter's worth of basketball, and the Spurs outscored you 40-13. From down 81-64, San Antonio outscored you 40-13 to come back and win 104-94. Rough loss for the Warriors. Now, if we do want to try to spin this in a positive light, back end of a back-to-back on the road, the Warriors' first road back-to-back of the season, and that's never easy. There were some travel challenges for the Warriors on this trip, getting out of the Bay Area and heading to New Orleans. That would have been on Thursday evening in preparation for Friday in New Orleans. Delayed big time by the weather in the Bay. I believe they were supposed to take off early in the afternoon, didn't take off until later in the evening, didn't get to their hotel, I think, close to 1 a.m. On early Friday morning, late Thursday night, early Friday morning, the day of the game. So you're probably a little bit exhausted from that. Plus, you had the game Friday, which went down to the wire as well. You only won that game by 4 points, and now you've got a quality San Antonio team tonight. And it kind of felt like the Warriors ran out of gas a little bit. Now, that's no excuse. It's just the reality of the situation. The Warriors certainly have it in them to play a better fourth quarter than they did today. But that is the reality of the situation. It was a back-to-back in some difficult circumstances, but still, that does not excuse how poor that fourth quarter was, because it was really, really poor. How about this? In the middle of this San Antonio run, the 40-13 run that ended the game, the Warriors had a field goal drought of 5 minutes and 19 seconds. Over the course of 5 minutes and 19 seconds, they did not make a single field goal in the fourth quarter. Steph Curry hit a three. He had a three to push the Warriors' lead to 4. In fact, he answered a Wembanyama three. Wembanyama made a three. He shoots a lot of threes, by the way. We can talk about that later. For a guy that's 7'3" and has an 8-foot wingspan, he shoots a ton of threes. It almost feels like bailouts for the defense when that guy's shooting threes. We can talk about that later. But Curry answered a Wembanyama three by making one of his own to push the Warriors' lead to 4, 90-86, with 6:38 left in the fourth quarter. The Warriors' next made field goal was another Steph Curry three-pointer with 1:19 left. So the Warriors go 5 minutes and 19 seconds between field goals, and they were both Curry threes. And the second Curry three was like a ridiculous one that he hit. The Warriors were not getting good looks. They were getting absolutely nothing at the rim, and they were also missing their free throws. During that same stretch, 5 minutes and 19 seconds, they only scored 1 point, and they went 1 of 3 from the free throw line. It was not a good quarter for the Warriors offensively. They scored just 13 points in the fourth quarter, 4 for 19 from the field, 2 for 10 from downtown, 3 of 6 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter. It is a new season low for points scored in a quarter for the Warriors this year. The previous was 14. They scored that in the first quarter against the Pelicans. Not on Friday, not yesterday, but back in late October when the Warriors had that back-to-back at home against the Pelicans. The first game of that back-to-back at home against the Pelicans, they put up just 14 points in that first quarter. They came back and ended up dominating that game the rest of the way, but it was a rough first quarter. This fourth quarter tonight, though, worse in terms of total number of points. The Warriors only score 13 points in the fourth quarter today. Okay. Now that we got the story of this basketball game out of the way, I think we've got to bring something up here, because Jonathan Kuminga was a late scratch from this basketball game because of an illness. And considering what happened in the fourth quarter, this felt like a game where he was really, really missed. Jonathan Kuminga, how often is he... I know sometimes you get a little frustrated watching Jonathan Kuminga, right? Because sometimes the ball tends to stop when it gets to him. Maybe he's a little overly aggressive looking for his shot. But what the Warriors going through an offensive stretch like they did in that fourth quarter, when they just cannot get anything to go, it's just calling for a Jonathan Kuminga isolation drive and a finish at the rim. That's what this game was calling for. And without Jonathan Kuminga, you don't have a lot of guys who can just go and get their own at the rim. If the shots aren't falling, if Wiggins' threes aren't falling, if Moody's threes aren't falling, if Podziemski's threes aren't falling, and we're going to talk about Podziemski later, Draymond couldn't get anything to go today. Steph was relatively inefficient, 5 of 16. Wiggins was 6 for 16. Draymond Green was 0 for 5. When you don't have the consistent scoring from, your normal guys, that's when you just give the ball to Kuminga and say, all right, young fella, like get downhill, get to the rim, at the very worst, get to the free throw line, and hopefully you make them both. But we got to get the lid off the basket. The Warriors really, really missed Jonathan Kuminga tonight. Really missed him. And I'm not saying that if he played in this game, he's scoring 25 points and we're hailing him as the reason why the Warriors won. I'm not saying that. But he could have helped weather that San Antonio storm in the fourth quarter. Because when the Warriors' shots aren't falling like they were tonight, you got to find a way to manufacture points, right? Like it's kind of like in baseball, old school baseball. You don't see it a ton anymore, but old school baseball where you get a leadoff single, and maybe it's an infield single. Maybe it was a walk. Maybe it was a hit by pitch. You found a way to get on base. You steal second. And then you bunt him over to third, and then a sac fly brings a run in, right? You manufacture a run. You see that all the time. Maybe not as much now in Major League Baseball, but you see that in baseball. That's kind of the comparison for this kind of fourth quarter. You just got to find a way to manufacture points. It doesn't matter how it comes. They're just not coming right now. Like you have to figure out a way to make it work. And for all of Jonathan Kuminga's faults, and we've talked freely about them every night here on Warriors Wrap Up and Warriors Live before games and Warriors Wrap Up here after games. We talk about it a lot. He is a kind of guy where he can just, all right, I'm going to stop this 10-0 run. I'll get to the free throw line. I'll finish at the rim. And part of what makes this difficult as well, without Jonathan Kuminga, and even with him, it would be true as well. Victor Wembanyama is absolutely incredible defensively down low. I mean, try driving and scoring on Victor Wembanyama. He had 3 block shots today, and believe it or not, it felt like he had 7. Like he impacts almost every single shot an opponent puts up. He averages nearly 4 blocks a game, so he was actually below his season average in terms of blocks. But if you are to create a new statistic, not called blocks, but called shots impacted, I guarantee you he would lead the league in that as well. His 8-foot wingspan just allows him to impact almost every single shot that opponents put up, and specifically like every single shot inside the paint. He is around there somewhere. And Kuminga is one way to kind of, combat that. There are not a lot of other Warriors who can do that. So I thought something that stood out in this basketball game. Again, the Warriors lost 104-94 to the Spurs in San Antonio on the back end of a back-to-back. One thing that really hurt the Warriors was Kuminga's absence. And the other part of it is even just forgetting like skill set and what the Warriors were going up against and how the fourth quarter went. You're on the back end of a back-to-back. Give me the young legs, right? Give me the young athlete who's probably not as exhausted, not as tired as Steph or Draymond or even Andrew Wiggins, who's been carrying a really heavy load lately. Give me the young guy who can maybe run up and down, and maybe this would have been a game where Kuminga was going to get 30 minutes, right? He's been struggling to get playing time. This might have been one where he had a little bit more leeway and leash to go out there and get into a rhythm, and maybe the Warriors would have won this game if he was out there and playing. Okay, it's Warriors Wrap Up here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you. 888-957-9570. That's the number to call, and it's also the Comcast Business text line. I see the 408 chiming in, the 510, the 650. Shout out to all you guys tuning in to Warriors Wrap Up here on 95.7 The Game. Yeah, the 408 saying the same thing about Jonathan Kuminga. Would have been good to see him get a little bit of run and see if he could have, built a little bit of momentum going forward. Okay, up next is Skills in Vallejo. Skills, what's up? You're on Warriors Wrap Up with Mark Randy. How you doing, Skills?
Well, I was doing good up until the final fourth quarter, final quarter of tonight's game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show Cheers, but there was the character on there, Cliff, was not very good with women's. And there was a night where the character, Rebecca, was thanking him for something he had done with a kiss. And he was left like catatonic afterward. It cut like 3 hours later. The bar was closed. And when it left, he's still standing in the middle of the bar, just frozen. That's how I'm feeling right now after watching Golden State go on that, watching San Antonio go on that 40-13 run to end the game. I'm still just sitting here in total shock and disbelief that a sure victory got they let it just slip out of their hands. And you're absolutely right. And I saw you post this on X earlier, and you're saying it now too, that Kuminga out there would have made a definite difference. And I agree with you 110%. He would have went right around Victor. He would have went through everyone else on there and at least gotten, if nothing else, gotten some free throws out of it and hopefully made them. Last thing is that I told Victor through my screen tonight when he was shooting all those threes and breaking them, what are you doing? You're 7'3". Stop shooting threes. Go to the basket. Go do something. And unfortunately, he listened to me. So this loss is partially my fault too. Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Yeah, appreciate the call, Skills. I think you're spot on in a number of different ways. And yeah, shout out Cheers. Cheers maybe before my time when it was airing live, but I have since watched Cheers. Ted Danson, Woody Harrelson. I think Skills brought up the character Cliff, voiced by actor John Ratzenberger, I believe, who also was in the Toy Story movies, one of the voices in the Toy Story movies. But I digress. I think Skills is spot on in terms of the Kuminga point and also Victor Wembanyama. I don't get how Wembanyama, 7'3", 8-foot wingspan, and is shooting as many threes. I mean, not like he's a bad 3-point shooter, but you're a cheat code. Just get into the lane, and I think you'll be shooting a bigger percentage. Now, he was still really good in this basketball game, and he was the driving force behind a lot of what the Spurs did in that fourth quarter. He finished with 25 points. He had 7 rebounds and 9 assists. Honestly, I think the most impressive part of Wembanyama's game today was the passing. 9 assists. He was awesome passing the basketball. He just has such a good game sense, and that was on display all game long. But only 9 for 21 from the field, 4 of 13 from downtown. I think if you were to ask the Warriors, ask Steve Kerr pregame, would you take 25 points on 9 of 21 shooting by Wembanyama? And he absolutely would have said yes. First of all, it's kind of scary that we're saying it in that way about a 20-year-old in his second year in the league. He is a superstar already. He's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. He's going to get MVP consideration, especially if the Spurs continue playing pretty good basketball, now above 500. And he's probably going to be on an all-NBA team. That's how good he already is. I thought the Warriors did fine on him. Some of it, as Skills was talking about, was his willingness to just shoot a ton of three-pointers, 13 three-point attempts in this game. 3 more than Stephen Curry, by the way. And there was a good chunk of that fourth quarter where Steph was just chucking them up because nothing else was working. And at least it's a Steph Curry 3-point attempt. That's better offense than a number of other ways that the possession can end. But Wembanyama did get going in that fourth quarter, got a little bit more involved in the paint, and hurt the Warriors in that way. But I also think Skills is right about Jonathan Kuminga as well. And maybe if we can forget wins or losses for a second, it also just would have been, I think, a really good opportunity for Kuminga to get some solid, consistent run, because there's been so much energy spent on breaking down whether Kuminga should be playing more, how his minutes should be split up, what rotations he should be in. Do we actually think Wiggins and Kuminga can't work, or is it just when they're paired with Draymond and Trace Jackson-Davis as well? Can Kuminga work at the 4 when Wiggins is the 3 and Draymond is the 5? Does it then matter who the point guard and the shooting guard are? Like, there's been so much energy spent figuring out the Jonathan Kuminga situation, that tonight would have just been a really good moment where maybe you were able to get him 30 minutes and see if he can build up some confidence, because I think it's been a little bit frustrating lately. Before Friday, before yesterday in New Orleans, he had not played 20 minutes in a basketball game in like the last 3. The game in LA, and the one before that as well. Memphis, LA, and then the Hawks did not play 20 minutes in any of those basketball games. Barely got above 20 against the Pelicans. And I think this would have been an opportunity for him to get over 20, maybe 25, maybe 30 minutes tonight, especially considering the Warriors on the back end of a back-to-back. So a missed opportunity there, unfortunate timing with this illness that kept Jonathan Kuminga out, and we did not know about it. I did not know about it when I was on the air for Warriors Live. It was a relatively late addition to the injury report, and not saying that it impacted the Warriors' plans defensively or offensively in their game plan at all, but I do think it potentially hurt the Warriors and maybe cost them a win. I think Kuminga could have been a difference in this basketball game. The 510 chiming in on the Comcast Business text line. This is the Victor Wembanyama effect. The Warriors had 3 blocks. The Spurs had 9 blocks. And I can check this for you, 510, and appreciate you tuning in and adding to the conversation. I think the Warriors' blocks all came in the first half. Let me figure this out for you. The Warriors, 3 blocks. Yes, all in the first half. So the Warriors go the final 24 minutes without blocking a shot. Not that that's terribly out of the ordinary, but it kind of highlights the way this game went. The activity level went down. Obviously, the defense as a whole went backwards in the second half. I mean, it was one of the best halves defensively the Warriors have played all year, the first half. You only give up 38 points in the first half. That's the fewest points the Warriors have allowed in any half so far this year. And then you follow it up in the third quarter and the fourth quarter by giving up 33 points each. So 38 points allowed in the first half and 66 points allowed in the second half. And then the Spurs used their length and athleticism and their defensive prowess to keep the Warriors down. The Warriors only scored 44 points in the second half, and that's after a 31-point third quarter. They only scored 13 points in the fourth quarter of this basketball game. So, that's a good stat to point to. It's the blocks, it's the deflections, it's the steals, it's the turnovers. How active is your defense? And the activity level for the Warriors was awesome in the first half. It's kind of hard to look past, the circumstance of the back-to-back and all that. And that seemed like a factor because it kind of felt like the Warriors ran out of gas just a little bit down the stretch of this basketball game. Okay, something else that we got to get into here. Brandon Podziemski has really been struggling. Brandon Podziemski, tonight, this was maybe one of his worst games as a pro. He played 15 minutes and 34 seconds tonight, scoreless. 0 for 3 from the field, 0 for 1 from downtown, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a turnover. That's the full stat line for Brandon Podziemski in this basketball game. And first of all, we got to be fair to the kid. He's a second-year player. 2 years ago, was playing West Coast Conference basketball at Santa Clara, and this is not me making excuses, but it's natural for a young player like him to go through rough patches. This whole season has been pretty rough on him. Brandon Podziemski on the season is averaging 7.7 points per game. He's shooting under 38% from the field and just under 19% from downtown. And, this has been a big topic around the Warriors lately. It was the game on Wednesday against the Hawks. I believe it was on the Wednesday game. Yeah, it was, where Draymond Green talked for nearly 3 minutes straight about Brandon Podziemski, essentially blaming the media and everyone talking about Podziemski and hyping him up going into his sophomore season because it's put a lot of pressure on him to try to live up to the standard that he set himself in his rookie year. First team all rookie. He was amazing and at a revelation and came out of nowhere. And he was an awesome, awesome addition to the Warriors last season. Without him, I tell you what, they don't even make the play-in. That's how good Brandon Podziemski was. Did all of the small stuff, all of the gritty stuff, all of the dirty work, and followed it up, with solid shooting stats. And it was consistently the Warriors' leader in plus minus all season long. A lot of that has still been true Like, he's still doing the dirty stuff. He's still making all the small plays and the heady plays, and he's drawing charges, right? And he's up around the leaders in plus minus, although it has changed a little bit the last couple of weeks. And you look at his game log, it has not been pretty. How about his numbers in the month of November? He's averaging 6 points per game on 38.6% shooting and 16.7% from downtown. And what makes this so much more difficult for the Warriors is with those numbers under any circumstance, not great. When you had DeAnthony Melton and you didn't have to rely on Brandon Podziemski to be the other ball handler behind Stephen Curry, to be the number 2 point guard, to be the backup point guard, and to be the distributor and the initiator on offense for the second unit, you could live with that. Not that it's ideal, but you could be fine because you have DeAnthony Melton to do all of that stuff, right? Like, these are players that are kind of built in a similar mold. Melton obviously is more experienced and has had more success in the NBA, at least more consistent success in the NBA up to this point. But I mean, it's defense and it's ball handling and it's setting up teammates and it's hitting the 3-point shot when you're open. I think that's kind of the way that Podziemski wants to play. Melton, awesome at that role, and ever since he's gone down with the ACL injury and now has opted for ACL surgery, meaning he'll miss the entire season, the Warriors have had to rely on Brandon Podziemski to be that number 2 ball handler and lead the second unit. Essentially, every single non-Stephen Curry minute has been Brandon Podziemski on the floor. The Warriors have either had Steph Curry or Brandon Podziemski on the floor 24/7. Like, every waking second of every basketball game since Melton went down. Because the Warriors don't have a lot of other ball handlers. If I were to ask you, not Steph and not Melton, who are the Warriors' best ball handlers, you probably would say Draymond Green and Kyle Anderson, right? Like, 2 of their big guys. 2 guys that they want to play at the 5. Those are like the other Warriors options in terms of ball handlers. So when that's the case, those are the only 2 ball handlers you have. You have to play them. Like, one of them has to be on the court almost 24/7, and that's really what the Warriors have done. And what makes it more difficult on Podziemski is when that's the case, when you can't stagger his minutes, suddenly he's playing so many fewer minutes with Steph Curry on the court, and the vast majority of his minutes come without Steph Curry on the floor. And we know, we've watched Steph Curry for 16 years now. We know Steph Curry makes everybody's life easier. Everybody's life easier. So when you're Podziemski entering your second year in the NBA, and you're struggling from the field, and Draymond Green has talked about it, Steve Kerr has talked about it, there's a little bit of hesitance. He's kind of losing confidence. Not the easiest thing to go out there and just forget about, the fact that you went 0 for 5 from the field last time out. Like, some people can do it. Klay Thompson, great at that. And it's part of what made him such a great shooter. Also part of what made him so frustrating at times, because it's like, Klay, you're 0 for 11. Take a shot off, right? But the greatest ones have that short memory. And as a second-year player, I think at times it's kind of hard to think like that, especially when you hold yourself to such a high standard. And Brandon Podziemski absolutely holds himself to that standard. But there's no doubt, tonight was bad. Brandon Podziemski scoreless in 15 and a half minutes today and was a team worst -14. In the 15 and a half minutes he was on the court, the Warriors were outscored by 14 points. That is rare. And what that tells you is he's not doing a lot of the other stuff. Because in the past, when he struggles shooting the ball, he's still doing everything else well, and he's helping the Warriors win. That was not the case tonight. This was one of his worst games as a professional. 0 from the field, did not score, and was a team worst in plus minus. It's only one game worth of plus minus, very small sample. We don't need to draw crazy conclusions from just one game, but tonight was rough. And without DeAnthony Melton, the Warriors need Brandon Podziemski to play better. Not that they need him to go 4 for 5 from downtown, although that would be nice, but they need him to continue doing all the other things and not let his shooting struggles impact the rest of his game. And that's where the Warriors are really hurting right now. But, with all that said, it's just one loss, and the Warriors are still 12-4. Despite the loss, they're still 7-3 away from home. And we can, again, not find excuses or reasons, but just deal in facts here. Back end of a back-to-back. You got into New Orleans super late. Thursday night, Friday morning, played that game, traveled overnight to San Antonio, played this game, and you were awesome for like 2 quarters and 10 minutes, right? You were awesome for 34 minutes, and then it was the final 14 that got you. And the Warriors' legs, it just kind of felt like came out from under them, and they ran out of gas a little bit. The 510 on the Comcast Business text line, frustrating game for sure, but the bright side is seeing Kevon Looney having a solid season and a good game tonight. Looney had a stretch in the third quarter. He was part of the reason the Warriors built that 17-point lead late in the third quarter. He had a stretch where he scored like 6 points in a span of a minute and a half or 2 minutes, and the final bucket of that stretch for him, a drive on Victor Wembanyama, a sweet little crossover move from left to right for Looney, got past Wembanyama and still finished at the rim with the right hand. And what's crazy about Wembanyama, and the league is learning this, you can beat him off the dribble, although he's got pretty decent lateral quickness for a dude as big as him, 7'3" and an 8-foot wingspan. But even if you do beat him off the dribble, that 8-foot wingspan can erase anytime he gets beat. So you get past him and suddenly he's behind you and trailing the play. You go up with your right hand to try to lay it up off the glass, and he'll just come from behind, reach over the top of you, and swipe that ball away. But Looney was able to sneak it up off the rim just in time, and he beats Victor Wembanyama there. But Wembanyama is a tough customer to go up against defensively. I think he's going to be the defensive player of the year this season as long as he does stay healthy. But Kevon Looney got the better of him in that moment. Yeah, Looney had himself a decent night. He finished with 8 points, had 7 rebounds in 12 in nearly 13 minutes. But much like some other Warriors, he was a -10 in the plus-minus in this one tonight, partly because he was on the floor for that stretch in the fourth quarter when the Warriors just could not get anything going. Like, if you look through the Warriors plus-minus through 3 quarters, and I can actually do it for you here, it was very, very good. Let's see. Through 3 quarters, Warriors plus-minuses. Steph Curry was a +18. Andrew Wiggins was a +13. Draymond Green was a +12. Gary Payton II was a +11. That's through 3 quarters. And then, why don't I disappoint everybody and read you the fourth quarter plus-minuses? Lindy Waters was a -16. Steph Curry a -14. Wiggins and Green -12 each. Kevon Looney -10. Moses Moody -8. And it goes on and on and on from there. So it really was a tale of the first 3 quarters and then the fourth quarter. The game turned late in the third, and it continued into the fourth quarter, and the Warriors could not get out of their way. They only scored 13 points in the fourth. They at one point spent 5 minutes and 19 seconds of game time without making a single field goal. It was a rough fourth quarter for the Warriors, and they fall 104-94 here in San Antonio tonight. The Warriors now 12-4 on the year and 7-3 away from Chase Center. Warriors, they led by 17 points again, 81-64 with about 2 to go in the third quarter. The rest of the way, 40-13 San Antonio. The Warriors could not buy a bucket. The Spurs, and I think this is where it was relatively obvious what was going on in this basketball game. And first of all, credit to San Antonio and how well they played in the fourth quarter specifically. But in the fourth quarter, part of what led to San Antonio getting back in the game and ultimately winning, it was like the effort plays. It was second chance points. And it was points off turnovers. They forced 4 turnovers. The Spurs did in the fourth, but they turned those into 7 points. So almost every time the Warriors turned the ball over, it was points the other way. It was offensive rebounds for San Antonio and second chance points. The Spurs, 6 second chance points in the fourth quarter. and they were both made threes. They got offensive rebounds and eventually kicked it out and made threes. Those are backbreakers, offensive rebounds that turn into made threes, and that's what got the crowd going, and then it just kind of a snowball effect for the rest of the quarter, and the Warriors ultimately lose. Final score, again, 104-94 in favor of the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, time for a break here on Warriors Wrap-Up. When we come back, we will sort through everything left in this basketball game, and we'll hear from Steve Kerr as well. We'll check out the play of the game. There are a couple of candidates for this one as well, and we'll hand out our honor for crashing the boards. All of that is coming up as we continue on Warriors Wrap-Up. The Dubs fall to the Spurs tonight, 104-94. It's Mark Randy with you on 95.7 The Game. More Warriors Wrap-Up next.
Pizza just goes better.
And the Warriors need buckets. They need them quickly. They had the game in hand, and then they let Wembanyama come back in and get a rhythm.
Now back to Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game.
Yeah, that's Tim Roy, and he's exactly right. The Warriors had this one. They were up by 17 the final 2 minutes of the third quarter. From that moment on, though, the Spurs outscore the Warriors 40-13. A lot of it was Victor Wembanyama. That three you just heard as called by the great Tim Roy here on 95.7 The Game earlier tonight made it 96-90. San Antonio, the Warriors were stuck on 90 for what felt like the entire fourth quarter of this basketball game. They led by 17 late in the third. 7-0 Spurs run to close the third quarter, including two Warriors turnovers in the final 35 seconds of the quarter. That led to 5 quick points for San Antonio. Instead of being up by 17 or 20, you were only up by 10 going into the fourth quarter, and then the run continued. The Warriors went without a field goal for 5 minutes and 19 seconds of the fourth quarter, nearly a half of a quarter, nearly 6 full minutes. The Warriors did not make a single field goal. They were 2 Steph Curry threes. The first one was from 4 feet behind the line, a very deep three, and then 5 minutes and 19 seconds of game time later, he hit a crazy one off a wild scramble, offensive rebound, loose ball, and it was from way deep on the left wing, and that one went in. Those were the only 2 field goals the Warriors made for a big chunk of the fourth quarter. In between those 2 made field goals, 5 minutes and 19 seconds of game time. It was a rough fourth quarter. The Warriors only score 13 points in the quarter, 4 for 19 from the field, 2 for 10 from downtown. Not great from the free throw line as well, 3 for 6 from the stripe. Worst fourth quarter, at least offensively, for the Warriors all season. Wasn't great defensively either, as the Spurs put up 33 points in the fourth, 33 in the third as well. It really was a tale of 2 halves for the Spurs offense. I mean, the Warriors in the first half, it was maybe their best defensive half of the year. San Antonio in the first half, 14 for 43 from the field. That's a little over 32% from the field in the first half. They were only 6 for 26 from downtown in the first half. That's 23%. It was the fewest points the Warriors have allowed in any half so far this year. But the second half, it was nowhere near as good. In fact, it was relatively bad defensively for the Warriors. The Spurs shot 57% from the field in the second half. They weren't incredible from downtown, but certainly better than they were in the first half. They were 7 for 21 from downtown, making a third of their threes, but they were getting a lot at the rim. They were getting offensive rebounds. They were getting second chance looks. And when the Warriors would turn the ball over, which again was not often, 10 turnovers tonight, they were almost always turning those into points. And it's kind of like reverse of what happened last night. Warriors in New Orleans, both teams turned it over a lot in that basketball game. And the difference was the Warriors were way more efficient at turning those turnovers into points. So the Warriors actually turned the ball over more than New Orleans did, but they beat them big time in points off of turnovers. And in a game in which you win by 4, that's a pretty big deal. San Antonio, meanwhile, they took care of the ball as well. The Warriors 10 turnovers, the Spurs 9. But the Warriors turned those 9 San Antonio turnovers into only 9 points. San Antonio turned the 10 Warrior turnovers into 16 points. So that's also where this game was won and lost, was points off turnovers. Were they dead ball turnovers? Were they live ball turnovers? Did you turn them into looks and good looks and points? San Antonio did that far more often than the Warriors. And a game in which, it's decided in the fourth quarter, things like that oftentimes are going to decide this basketball game. There was some fun moments in this one. I guess, while I was talking about some of the free throw numbers, let's just run through what the Warriors did from the line, because that has been a major topic for the Warriors so far this year. It was not great again tonight. We're kind of just waiting for the Warriors to figure it out from the free throw line. And it still is not happening. On the night, 8 for 13 from the line, and it only got worse as the game went along. In fact, through 3 quarters, it was all right. The Warriors were 5 for 7 from the line through 3 quarters. Not bad. Maybe you'd want to make one more of those. Ideally, of course, all 7. But then in the fourth quarter, the Warriors go just 3 for 6. And a couple of those misses, I believe 2 of them, they went 1 for 3 during that stretch where they did not make a field goal for over 5 minutes of basketball. Bad. You can't have that if you're the Golden State Warriors. Free throws overall in the night, 8 for 13. You shoot 61.5% from the line tonight. Your season average is 70, and that's near the very bottom of the league. And it's going down tonight because you went just 8 for 13 from the line. So that's not good from the Golden State Warriors as well. 888-957-9570. That's the number to both call and the Comcast Business text line if you want to join the conversation. The 650 chiming in on the Comcast Business text line. The Warriors choked this one away to the Spurs. First game all season they should have put away and didn't. Bounce back on Monday night. It's a good way to think about it, 650, as we can run through the other Warriors losses. You have the 2 losses to the Clippers. You have the one in Cleveland where you were blown out of the water at halftime. Really, you were blown out of the water in the first quarter. And then you have tonight in San Antonio. The 2 Clippers losses, they were close, and you might have left that game feeling like we probably could have or should have or easily could have won this game if it wasn't for all those turnovers. But it's not as if those were games where, like tonight, you led for the majority of the basketball game and you let a major lead slip away. So I think the 650 does have a point, and I think what backs it up as well is the Warriors in clutch time so far this year. Let's see, where is this statistic? I know I have it here somewhere for you. The Warriors in clutch time, here it is. Warriors in clutch time now are 5-3. After they lost tonight. The other 2 losses, of course, are the Clippers losses. But again, that was a little bit different because the Warriors did not lead by 17 points late in the third quarter in those games and then choke away a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. Those were more close, competitive battles all night long, and then the Warriors did not have enough down the stretch. This was, you had this game nearly put away, and then you couldn't quite get the job done. So a good point there from the 650. It's the second night of a back-to-back on the road, your first road back-to-back of the season. These things aren't easy, and it's the third game in 4 nights. Not easy. But when you have a 17-point lead late in the third quarter against a team that's not a bad team, but also not a great team, you feel like that's a game that you should be able to win. Okay, Mark Randy with you on Warriors Wrap Up on 95.7 The Game, 888-957-9570. Join the conversation there by dialing that number or texting the Comcast Business text line. Again, that number, 888-957-9570. Let's hear from Coach Kerr, though. Warriors head coach Steve Kerr, post-game addressing the media in San Antonio after his Dubs blew a 17-point late third quarter lead, a 10-point fourth quarter lead, and they lose by a final score of 104-94 in San Antonio. Here is Warriors head coach Steve Kerr.
The Spurs were great. They were so good in that fourth quarter defensively, flying around. I thought the way that the third quarter ended was a killer. We had a 15-point lead and the ball with 35 seconds. So we're going to get a 2-for-1 and hopefully go up 17 going into the fourth. We get a turnover, and then they score 5 in a row. So a 10-point game going into the fourth. That was a key moment, momentum-wise, and I thought they earned it. The Spurs did with finishing the quarter like they did, and then dominating the fourth. They were fantastic.
How impactful was Victor's defensive reputation?
Yeah, he was amazing, blocking shots and thwarting others, just being a presence in the paint. It was an impressive performance by him and by the whole team defensively.
I mean, this was the third game in 4 nights, tough travel. Did you sense some fatigue?
We ran out of gas that fourth quarter, but this is part of the NBA, and we have to learn how to execute, under pressure when we're tired, and we didn't do that tonight, but we'll get better.
JK, late scratch, how's he doing? Is there anything? I
think he's fine. He just felt sick right before the game.
And then what can you take away from a game like this and, these 2 days, just how frenetic everything was?
we keep on keeping on. You just you move forward. It's been a great start to the season. Disappointing loss because we had control of the game mid-third, and it felt like we were about to break it open, and but we didn't. And so you learn from it. You give the other guys credit because they're the main reason we lost. I mean, they like I said, the Spurs were fantastic, and they earned it. And we've got to just bounce back. We'll fly home tonight and hopefully get a little rest and back at it on Monday.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's Steve Kerr postgame tonight in San Antonio. Yeah, the Warriors getting ready to board a plane to head back to the Bay Area right now. Up next, the Golden State Warriors take on the Brooklyn Nets. That's Monday at home. 7 o'clock is the tip time, which means coverage begins at 6 here on 95.7 The Game on Monday. Warriors in action this week. Thanksgiving week, by the way, coming up. Warriors Monday again versus Brooklyn. At home again versus Oklahoma City on Wednesday. They have Thanksgiving off. They have Black Friday off. Then they're in Phoenix on Saturday. In Denver on Tuesday of the following week. By the way, that game in Denver, Tuesday, December 3rd, that is the final NBA Cup group stage game for the Warriors. But remember, with what happened last night, the Warriors winning in New Orleans and Dallas beating the Nuggets in Denver, the Warriors have already clinched West Group C, which means they will be on to the quarterfinals of the NBA Cup. 8 teams in the quarterfinals, and then it's just, NCAA tournament bracket. Single elimination, win and you move on, lose and you're out. So that game in Denver does not mean anything really for the Warriors in the NBA Cup, but it is still a regular season game, of course. So it's not like the Warriors will just be taking that one off, but they are already through to the next stage of the NBA Cup. So keep that in mind for that game, Tuesday, December 3rd, the Warriors in Denver against the Nuggets. But that's a ways away. The Warriors got 2 games at home, and then they go out on the road for Phoenix and Denver. It's kind of been an awkward schedule because the Warriors haven't really been in any one place that often. They had the 3-game homestand earlier this year, the Clippers, and then consecutive New Orleans games. Then they had the long 5-game road trip at home for 2, Dallas and Memphis. Then in LA, then home against Atlanta, then in New Orleans, now in San Antonio, then home for 2, then back on the road for 2, then home again. They are just flying all over the place right now, and it's hard, I think, to get into a rhythm that way. And I think it's something that Steve Kerr talked about at the end. They ran out of gas there and were a little bit winded, a little bit exhausted, trying to get some rest before the Nets game on Monday, and hopefully they come out and play better than they did in the second half, because that second half, it was not too good for the Golden State Warriors. I shouldn't even say second half. It was specifically the fourth quarter, because the Warriors in that third quarter, they built a 17-point lead, and then they just could not hold it. A couple of turnovers. It wasn't the total number of turnovers in this game. Only 10 for the Warriors, but it was when they happened. You have the ball up by 15 with like 40 seconds left, maybe 35 seconds left in the third quarter. And the way that you approach that is, I'm getting 2 shots off, they're getting 1. Worst case is they just outscore us by a single bucket, and we go into the fourth quarter up by 12 at the worst, more likely 13, if they are to score on their 1 attempt and we are to go 0 for 2 on our 2 attempts. That should be the worst case. But that actually was not the worst case, because the Warriors did not even get a field goal attempt up on their 2 possessions, and they committed the turnover so early in the first, they gave San Antonio their chance to get a 2 for 1, and they executed it to perfection. So instead of the Warriors having a chance to maybe lead by 17, 18, 19, 20 going into the fourth, they gave San Antonio the chances. Their turnovers led to easy buckets, and instead, you're looking at a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and that was where this game began to turn. The rest of that fourth quarter, of course, not good either, but it began late in that third. Without that stretch where you have the Looney moving screen, and then you have the Buddy Hield turnover that both lead to points the other way, the Warriors very well might win this game, even if they play a similar fourth quarter, because that 5-point swing, that really quick 5-point swing to close the third, it gave San Antonio momentum, and you could kind of feel it in the crowd. You could sense it with Wembanyama and Harrison Barnes, by the way, a familiar face who played well. He had 22 points in this game, so that was a gigantic moment in this basketball game as well. There was some, I think, impressive moments for the Warriors as we try to look on the bright side just a little bit. How did they build that 17-point lead late in the third quarter? Because it was kind of like a back and forth game for a while. The Warriors the lead oscillated between like 5 points and like 12 points for the majority of the game. The Warriors really couldn't ever put major distance between them and the Spurs. It kind of felt like it happened, though, when they went up by 17 late in the third quarter. But for the most part, this was like a 5-point, 10-point, 12-point game for the vast majority. And the Warriors consistently had to kind of stave off some mini runs. And there was one point in the third quarter, Warriors led by 12 at halftime. San Antonio put together kind of a mini run going into the third quarter, or in the middle of the third quarter. They had cut the lead down to 6, San Antonio did, and the Warriors, with about 8 minutes to go in the quarter, they get consecutive made threes from Lindy Waters. Lindy Waters in this basketball game wasn't bad. He was in double figures, 11 points, 3 for 8 from downtown. You will take 3 for 8 from downtown anytime. Consecutive threes after the Spurs got back within 6. It pushes the lead immediately back up to 12. The Spurs call timeout. That continues to lead into the Warriors' 17-point lead. And if that was a lead that they held and they ultimately go on to win this basketball game, we are talking about those Lindy Waters threes as a turning point in this game, because it felt like the Spurs run was happening then. But then Lindy Waters put an end to it with consecutive made threes. The lead goes up to 12, eventually balloons to 17, and you're thinking, all right, we got this one in the bag. But then, of course, we know what happened the rest of the way. But good moment there from Lindy Waters. There's also one other play I wanted to highlight in this basketball game, and then we'll take care of business before we get on out of here. It was a moment in the first quarter, and this might seem kind of innocuous, but let me try to explain it for you. Late first quarter, I think both teams had just committed a turnover. There was kind of like a regaining of possession by San Antonio around half court. And Wembanyama, after regaining possession of the basketball, begins dribbling back towards the bucket. And Kevon Looney, who's trying his best to recover after the possession changed hands, kind of just comes in from behind Wembanyama and snatches the ball away, and the Warriors suddenly are on the fast break. Looney, after getting the steal, feeds it to Moody, who pushes the tempo, and as Moody is pushing, it's Buddy Hield in a dead sprint down the left sideline. A dead sprint down the left sideline to try to get in position for a fast break bucket. The Spurs, though, defended it well. There was no lane for Moody to make the pass, and he made the right decision to not force something in there because it very likely would have been a turnover. But Buddy Hield does not give up and does not stop running. So he runs down the left side, gets to the left corner, realizes I'm not getting the ball, I'm defended well. So then he turns and runs baseline all the way over to the right corner, covered there as well. Moody then begins to shift and dribble and fade kind of over to the right wing, with Hield now in the right corner. And as Hield's defender kind of stays up on him, Hield, a little bit of a jab step, and then cuts baseline. Moody, a beautiful backdoor pass, and Hield, a great reverse finish. I think that just highlights what Buddy Hield has brought to this basketball team. And it's not just the shooting, although you will take it every single time out when he's shooting the three as well as he has been so far this season. What is he now on the year? From downtown, Buddy Hield on the season is 44% from downtown. You'll take that. You'll take that any year that you can get. He hasn't been great as good shooting recently. The numbers in November a little bit down than the first part of the season, and specifically lately, he was 2 for 7 last night. He had 3 for 9. He had 2 for 6. He had 2 for 8. Hasn't been as good lately for Buddy Hield, but still very good. But I think what I'm getting at here is what Buddy Hield does everywhere else, that never slumps. never slumps. Buddy Hield sprinting the floor relentlessly. That never slumps. Never. And Buddy Hield is always running. Always. And I even when he goes through stretches where he's not shooting the ball well, because he'll go through a stretch where, like any shooter does, where you're struggling to hit your shot a little bit. Like, he's not going to shoot 44% from downtown all season. I would be surprised if he did. The Warriors, of course, would take it if he did, but I don't think he will. The effort and the energy and running the floor and doing those sorts of things, that will never slump. And that, I think, is also something that impacts the rest of the team. It inspires the rest of the team. It encourages the rest of the team. You kind of get buy-in, kind of contagious, that kind of effort. And it led directly to a bucket. And it was all because, one, Moody heads-up play, keeping an eye on Hield, knowing Hield was not going to give up on the play. But it's also Buddy Hield, just an incredible amount of effort for Buddy Hield on that play to get himself a couple of points. So I wanted to highlight that, because while he didn't have the best shooting night tonight, he was really good in the first half. He finishes 11 points, 4 for 9 from the field. Wasn't bad. 3 for 7 from downtown. In fact, a little better, I think, that I'm giving him credit for. It wasn't the most high output scoring night from Buddy, only those 11 points. But I thought the most impressive 2 of the 11 points he scored was that stretch in the first quarter when he just ran down the court, wasn't open, ran baseline to the opposite corner, wasn't open, ran back, cut baseline, backdoor, layup off the pass from Moody. Great moment there for Buddy Hield. But that was not our play of the game, because our play of the game belongs to Stephen Curry. Late in the third quarter, part of the Warriors building that 17-point lead, it was more acrobatics from Stephen Curry. He has done something like this so many times in his career, it's hard to count. Here's how it sounded earlier tonight on 95.7 The Game.
Curry goes up, spins it up and off the glass, and good as he came down. There was no reason for him to try a shot. Collins was draped on his back. He had no angle to work with whatsoever. He was actually falling out of bounds when he did it, and just threw it up with side English on it. It went high off the glass. It was almost like a pool shot. Ridiculous.
Tim Roy. That's Tim Roy, who has called all 16 years to Stephen Curry, and Stephen Curry is still leaving him speechless. And I don't blame you, Tim. That was an amazing play by Stephen Curry, and the reason why he was falling out of bounds was because Zach Collins fouled him. A big-time body bump, and he just sends him flying out of bounds. Steph somehow the wherewithal to know where he is in relation to the rim, and Tim Roy also mentioned the English, the spin that he put on the ball to get it to fall in off the glass. The way that he contorts his body and does all those like mental calculations to figure out like, all right, I need to put this much spin on it and it'll go in off the glass at this angle and it will drop. Obviously, it's nothing that he's actively thinking about because he's done this for so long. But the fact that he has the ability to adjust on the fly like that in the blink of an eye, it is amazing. And I think much like Tim Roy, we are often left speechless by Steph Curry, despite seeing it for 16 years now. Steph Curry was awesome, and that is our play of the game tonight here on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game. Okay, last thing we got to take care of here tonight is Crashing the Boards. As always, Crashing the Boards is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Let's take a look at the totals for the Warriors in this basketball game tonight, and we will go, you know what? I'm not going to give it to the guy who had the most rebounds tonight. That would be Trayce Jackson-Davis, 8 boards in 23 minutes. I'm going to look more on like a per-minute basis, and that's where we get Kevon Looney some deserved love. Nearly 13 minutes for Looney tonight, 12 minutes and 40 seconds. 7 rebounds. 7 rebounds in 12 minutes and 40 seconds. That is more than a rebound every 2 minutes. If you're doing that, you are going to be among the league leaders in rebounds. The issue for Looney is, of course, he does not play usually upwards of 25 minutes a night, so difficult for him to lead the league in rebounds, but he was on the glass often tonight. 7 rebounds in his 12 minutes and 40 seconds off the bench, and he also chipped in with 8 points. He had a big third quarter to help build the Warriors' lead, but unfortunately it all disappeared from them in the fourth quarter. All right, Kevon Looney gets our Crashing the Boards honor tonight, which again is brought to you by Chilton Auto Body, the Bay Area leader in collision repair. Dubs fall in San Antonio tonight. Final score 104-94. The Warriors now 12-4 on the year, 7-3 away from home, and they return home for the Brooklyn Nets coming up on Monday. Then they have the Oklahoma City Thunder on Wednesday. Warriors have Thanksgiving off, also Black Friday off. Then they'll head back out on the road for Phoenix and Denver beginning a week from today on Saturday, November 30th. So for Cam Williams, for Chris O'Connell, my name is Mark Randy signing off. I'll catch up with you again tomorrow. We've got Niners football coverage for you here on 95.7 The Game. The kickoff show begins at 11 in the morning with Evan Giddings and Looney. They'll take you up until kickoff around 1:25 or so. And then I've got you covered along with Kyle Madsen and Sterling Bennett for overtime the second the game ends. Tune into 95.7 The Game for postgame coverage. Niners in Green Bay without Brock Purdy, without Nick Bosa, maybe without Trent Williams. We'll find out, and we'll talk you through all of it tomorrow here on 95.7 The Game. But until then, my name is Mark Randy signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow right here on 95.7 The Game.